Hey there, welcome back. So this is the third and last video of the three-part series we are doing, or I'm doing, about the medicine wheel and the soul archetype. So in the first video, I went through all the directions of the medicine wheel and gave you kind of a broad map of what each direction brings as far as energy and kind of what the feeling is in each of those directions. And then in the second one, we went through the soul archetypes, and I think I got a little heady on you guys. I'm sorry about that. It was a long video, and there's a lot of information in there. And one of the things that I can't do is anything just mediocre. So I gave you a lot of information, and hopefully it made sense to you. I know it did to the mentorship people, because I got a lot of emails back from them saying, wow, this has really put a lot of clarity on some of the things that we go through in the mentorship. So that was good. And so in each of those, you had a chance to take a test. The first one, you took the soul archetype test to see what your predominant soul archetype is. And then in the second one, if you went through it's a very lengthy test. It'll take you probably, a good 15-20 minutes to go through it, but it's worth it to see how your energy is dispersed throughout the wheel, whether it's an excess or deficient or if it's balanced. And it gives you kind of an understanding of where things might need to be a little shifted. And it's common for all of us to have deficient, excess, and balanced in all four directions simultaneously. The trick is learning how to balance those deficiencies and excess energies by understanding how everything plays a piece of it. And today we're going to go through a little bit of that to kind of give you an idea of what that might look like. On this video, I'm hoping it's not going to be as long as the other two, just because it's New Year's Day. I'm going to go pick up my mom here in just a little bit. We're going to watch the Rose Bowl game and have a holiday. So I am going to kind of condense this down into what I can really can for today. But just a recap on who I am. I'm Dakota, and I own and have founded Gaia Wisdom School many years ago. And my primary emphasis is teaching people how to step back into their power, how to live more authentically, to live their inner truth, and to be really deeply connected to their sacred purpose. And their sacred purpose, I believe, is in 4 different quadrants. It's your spiritual life, what you do for a living or how you contribute to the world, the relationships that you keep, and the space that you live in and occupy. And once those all 4 are in balance and harmonious, you are really living your sacred purpose. And those 4 pieces fall into the medicine wheel, which is what I use as a guiding tool or a container or a framework to be able to understand the things that happen in our lives, and to keep pushing that edge to where we're always learning and growing and things don't become stagnant and robotic. So I had a couple of questions from the videos, and I wanted to touch on those. And then we're going to go through and kind of take things through the wheel and see what that looks like. That's what I always say, that's what I call it, taking it to the wheel. And it's just really being able to kind of look at it from the lens of the medicine wheel, to understand it, and then also to add some action to it, and to be able to draw energy from the different directions that you need. So I don't think I need to do any more recap of who I am. If you want to know more about me, you can go look at my about page on the website. I hate talking about myself. I'm always told you have to tell people who you are because you got people watching for the first time. I get that, but anyway, I am so happy. Actually, I do want to say this, that the response to these videos has been really uplifting. It's been beautiful to listen and read and hear some of the comments that you guys have been making, both on Facebook and YouTube and on the website. There's comments everywhere. And what it shows me is that there is such a need right now. There always has been, but right now in light of everything that's going on in our world, there really is a deep need for connection and for realness and authenticity. We've got so much going on in the world right now that is in kind of a disarray, to say the least. And to be able to see people for who they really are, and to just be honest and be truthful and to be real and to be present is very rewarding. And I'm hoping that my passion for what I do, and also my humanity and my authenticity, I hope comes through to you in these videos. This is how I teach. I pretend you're right here in my living room, and we have this conversation, and in that conversation we have an understanding of who each other is and what we are struggling with and what we're edging up against and how we can support each other. I am no different than you, and maybe that's what I'm trying to get at right now, is that I've done all this work and I've been doing this for 30 years and I've had all these business, I've always worked for myself, and I'm living my sacred purpose. I got all that. I've got all the certificates and all the classes and all the shamans that I've worked with and all of that. But at the end of the day, I am just like you. I also go through struggles. I also have to keep working the wheel, and every day make a conscious decision on how am I going to show up today? How can I be more authentic today? And what can I do to grow my soul today? And there's some days where I am cursing up a storm and I'm angry because I've done something that, I don't know, stubbed my toe or said something that I shouldn't have said or whatever. But I go through all of that also. And I would like to think that I'm never above that, and that we, and that's, okay, let me frame this out for a second. In my work, it is super, super important to me that you understand very clearly how powerful you are, and that you have the absolute access to everything that anybody else does. There is nobody in this world who has more access than another person. There's nobody in the world who has the ability to tap in when somebody else doesn't. We all have that ability. Sometimes we get clouded, sometimes we get caught up in the human experience or the ego, or we forget, or we're distracted, or we're addicted, or whatever the case might be. But there is not one single person in this world who has more privilege than you or me. There's no one above you, there's no one below you. And we are always at varying degrees of how connected we are, how imbalanced we are. And for me, even though I've been doing all this work and I have all the tools and I'm constantly finding my edge, there are still times where I dip way down. It's like, oh man, I need to really get out of my ego right now, or I need to get out of this whatever it is that I'm feeling, and get myself back to this space. I don't fall into victim. I try not to fall into victim. I try not to fall into the blame game or anything like that. I look at it for what it really is, and then I take it to the wheel and I figure it out. And actually today I'm going to give you 2 examples that are 2 things that I need to do. These are 2 of my goals coming into the new year. And I say that because sometimes I think people teach, or they get into this, into the healing arts, and they call themselves a healer, or they put themselves up here, like, I have all this wisdom, and I will distill all this wisdom to you. And that's not how it is. Yeah, you may have more experience, or you might have some tools that I'd love to learn from, or whatever, but this is me to you. You have that power. You have that wisdom. You are your own healer. Nobody can heal you. You can only heal yourself. Somebody can assist you. Somebody can create that space for you to be able to do that for yourself. But you have that power. You have that ability. And I feel like my job here is to just simply wake you up and help you remember what you already know. And if I can do that, great. Then I have served my sacred purpose. But I don't want you to think for one moment that I stand here in front of you and say, this is what you need to do. I'm never going to be doing that. What I am doing is I am constantly unfolding some new ideas, and I'm using intuitive questioning, and I'm sharing what I do know, what wisdom I have gathered from the medicine wheel, and I'm helping you to apply it to your life. And I feel like that's very different. I think if you ask anybody who's in the mentorship right now, that they will all say that my overreaching goal is to get them to be in their power. I'm not going to do it for you. And so if you have this idea that I can fix you, get that out of your head right now. I have enough on my plate with my own life. But what I can do is I can provide the space and tools and knowledge for you to be able to access and remember who you are at that deepest level of who you are. To remember what your sacred purpose is. To remember the intuitive, innate, and intrinsic power that you have. And that is, you are no different than everybody else. I am no different than everybody else. And in that, we are each other's mirror. And so we teach each other and we learn from each other. And I am constantly learning from the students in the mentorship, the people who are on the Facebook group. I'm in awe of everybody that I am surrounded by. In part because I feel like I must be doing something really right, because I have a lot of really, really amazing people in my life. And I've cultivated that. So anyway, now let's go to, I got one question that I want to do right now, and then there's a few questions I got at the end that are more about the mentorship, and I want to do that towards the end. But the question, let me grab my tablet. Because I need to find the question. This was a great question, actually, from Natalia on the website. She says, "I love having a display and a map of what's going on. Thank you for your gift. How can I feel into stagnant energy in one direction or another and release the blockage into my natural flow? Is it possible to be going through a phase of intensity of one direction because needs to deal with it and not being able to move on till the next? For example, big introspective north direction, year-long time. This year I feel I needed this phase a year long as I much disassociated and lost my spiritual body was in the past. So sort of a north direction intense treatment." Okay. So I think basically what she's asking is, how can you get out of kind of the habit of, or too much energy, way too much energy in one direction, and how can you move that around the wheel? And so we are going to actually kind of employ that. In fact, I took one of her, I would call it too much inward energy in the north direction. And I'm going to take you through that in just a second, Natalia. But what I would say too is that, so you've got the 4 directions. I realized when I was watching the videos back that it looks backwards on the camera, so I had to change east over here so it looks right on the camera. Okay, so if you've got too much energy up here, and this is the north direction is what we're going into here in north of the equator, so it's wintertime, and that's that time of introspection. And if you've got, now this is not going to make a lot of sense if you didn't watch video 2, but in energy capacities, you've got either balanced, excess, or deficiency bed. And if you have, this is going to be counterintuitive, but if you have a deficiency in the north, a high deficiency in the north, you get too withdrawn and too isolated, and that becomes very stagnant. So the earth is the element up here, so you actually just have way too much earth energy. And there's many ways that you can kind of make this flow and unblock it, but first you have to understand what is blocking you. And there are many things, and I'm not going to answer that for Natalia because I don't know what is blocking her, but sometimes you need to have some energy up here if you're really going through big shifts in your life. This last year, I took an entire year and went into the north direction consciously. And I did that because I had just spent 6 years in a relationship and really actually living an isolated life in the mountains of North Carolina. And I made the decision to leave that. But I had lost so much of who I was that I needed to really get back in tune with that inner core of who I am by myself, without anybody else around. So I traveled solo for a year, and I consciously went into the north direction and cultivated that relationship with myself again, and really came back into sync with what my sacred purpose is, and my relationship to my guides and to nature, and really understanding who am I. So in that sense, I was actually employing it from a balanced point of view because I did it consciously. Natalia, I don't know if you took this time to go inward consciously or not. If you didn't and you just found yourself there and you couldn't get yourself out, then most likely you were in a deficient state and you didn't have enough energy. It's almost like you had so much weight on you that it was pulling you into that earth element and just can't move. It's like trying to move through quicksand. And sometimes when we get into a situation in our life where we are not allowing ourselves to go through all of this, and maybe we want to so desperately see the spiritual side of it, that it starts out in excess because we are light polarizing and we're trying to take the spiritual lessons and escape into the spiritual practices in order to not have to feel all of these other things that we're going through. And so it starts out in excess, and then it becomes just so much that it collapses in on itself, and then it starts to weigh you down, and then the balanced energy of the north then goes into deficiency. That's really a hard concept to understand without having gone through the mentorship, because it's that's what we do in the mentorship, is we figure out all of this energy and how are we going to do this dance around the wheel and not get caught up in one direction or the other, but to really fully understand how energy plays on each other. So if you have a deficiency in the north, then you are, and this is different than deficiencies in the other directions, I will say that, because deficiency in the north can lend yourself to, one, becoming very isolated, suicidal, depression. And those are very slow moving energies. And like I said, the quicksand is probably the best analogy, is you just can't move anywhere else. And so you will actually end up with deficiency in the other directions as well. you don't have enough going into your relationships, you don't have enough going into your work, or the ability to even make plans or goals, or use the mental body is usually a little cloudy. And then certainly not going into the west direction where we have movement and body, physical space, and things like that. So deficiency in the north is a little bit different than the other directions, and that's the caveat that I'm going to give to you here. To get that moving, one is to figure out why. Why are you blocked in the north? What is keeping you from moving this energy around? And sometimes it's going to be where you start out with just some easy things, like if you're going to go into the east direction, make a list of all the things that bring you joy. Make a list of the people who you feel supported by. And then if you want to, if you have enough energy, create some intentions and some goals. Like, you want to get out of the north, you want to get out of this blockage, you want to start moving again. What would that look like to you? And then when we come down into the south, we take that list of people that you feel supported by, reach out to a couple of them, and start making some plans to go meet with them, do things, get outside of your home, get outside of your space, and get some movement going out there. Get out in nature, get connected to nature again. And then also in the south we create soul dates, and soul dates are where you take time for yourself, for self-love, and it could be anything. I would say tap into that list of joys that you made in the east and bring that down to life, put some action into it in the south. And then in the west, it's working on some boundaries. So sometimes a north direction blockage comes because there's a lack of boundaries energetically, and you take on, most people who, like if you're watching this video, most likely you are an empath. And an empath without boundaries will take on everybody's energy and want to heal and take care of and blah, 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 to the point where it makes them sick, or it pushes them into the north that they just can't move anymore. And the idea of going out into a crowd is overwhelming. And so they just kind of hunker down here in this north direction. So also in the west direction is where we have movement, the physical body. So there's a lot to be said about endorphins and the chemical makeup of our body, serotonin, getting out in sunshine, getting out and moving, getting some fresh air, again working with nature, and just kind of reinvigorate that body. So that's briefly kind of a scenario that we would go through based on Natalia's question. I hope that cleared it up a little bit. And you know, what we can really say, or what I can really say, is that when you have a lot of energy that's concentrated in one direction, you're going to chokehold the other directions. And that's part of what our goal is to learn how to dance this wheel. And so you just got to know where the energy is and how does it affect these other directions. So if you took that soul archetype assessment test, not the soul archetype, the energy assessment test, the lengthy one on video 2, if you took that, then you got the results back and it showed you, oh wait, I'm sorry. I'm thinking about the mentorship. The mentorship people, they get this really beautiful packet, and it spells everything out for them. It shows them this pie chart, and then takes all of their answers and puts it into columns of what they answered that were deficient, what was excess. You can actually order that packet. I think we have it for $29.95, but that, let me think if I think on the email that you get a listing of all how you answered all the questions. I don't remember if it delineates whether it's deficient or excess. I'll have to check that. I'm sorry. If it does, then what you can do is you can look at the areas where you are deficient and the areas where you are in excess, and you can start to look and see the different patterns. Like if you are, if you're a workaholic, here in the east, then most likely you are probably abandoning some of your relationships, and that will cause a deficiency. You probably aren't eating as healthy because you don't have time. Let's put unhealthy eating. And that causes a deficiency. And then in the north, you get a deficiency because you're probably not doing as much spiritual practice. And so you start to see how things affect all these other areas. And don't bark, don't bark. Oh, my Navi sees the neighbor's dog, so she's about to go bonkers. She's about to have excess energy in her east. Okay, so workaholic, one thing here is causing all of these different scenarios within the wheel. And so when you can start to map out and look at how things are affecting all the different directions, you then have an idea of what needs to be done. And so at the onset, looking at the broad stroke, it's like, oh my gosh, I've got all this deficient energy, blah, blah, blah. But in truth, you can distill it down to one or two core issues that just need to be addressed. You change this, and then all of these begin to shift and morph. So I have people all the time. This is what I love about doing mentorship. At the beginning of the mentorship, everybody takes that test, and then they take it again at the end of the session to see how far they've moved those numbers. And almost always, somebody who has like a really, really high excess deficiency in all the different directions, and they get really discouraged. But what we do is we look at it and we distill it down to what are the one or two things that are causing most of this energy to be out of balance. And then they focus on that in that direction. And then maybe it will continue on to the next direction, and they're still working on it. But what happens is those deficient and excess numbers, they begin to decrease and the balance numbers start to increase. And then once they kind of get that all finessed and under wraps, then they have the next thing that they need to work on. Because what it will do is this workaholism is probably a mask for something else. So you probably, if you're a workaholic, yeah, that's going to create this deficiency around the wheel, but ultimately that's a mask for something else. And so you want to figure out what that something else is. But first you've got to fix this, or it might be one of the things you want to fix first. So that's kind of like this dance that we're constantly doing. The medicine wheel really is a living, evolving, breathing mechanism. And to really be in it, you have to be present and to be working it in the moment. And that's kind of why I teach this way, actually, because I feed off of so many things that are happening in my environment at any given time. And I don't know how that relates to what I just said, but there you have it. So I'm going to take two things. This is from my own personal life. And you have to look at, I got a little lunch box that says I believe in unicorns. It has all my markers. Okay, so this is my medicine wheel. And by the way, I take the test every time also. Because I am a work in progress. And I will say this too, if anybody ever says that they have learned it all, that they have achieved enlightenment, they're full of shit. Excuse my language. my philosophy is that if you are still breathing, then you are still learning. And if you're still learning, you're still a student. And if you're still a student, you're still human. And that's, we're here to learn. And when we've capped out this life, we will cease to exist and either reincarnate or whatever your beliefs are about the afterlife. But if you are not consciously and actively and proactively working towards more soul growth, if you're not always in that learning space, then you are so dipped down into the ego that you're actually way more out of balance than somebody who is a student. That sounds really judgmental. I'm sorry, but I really do believe that. I think that it's sadly there's something that happens in this. There's like a disconnect that happens when somebody feels like they have achieved so much knowledge and wisdom that they are now the enlightened ones who will teach everybody else. And it does a disservice to you, to me, to them also. So I say that because I am making a video to who knows who's going to watch this. And I'm going to be, this is my life. I'm going to share with you two things that I really want to begin working on. I have more, but right now we're going into the north direction, which is the spiritual body. And I was thinking about what areas am I out of balance in my north direction? And what do I, especially now here we're at the new year, what do I want to change and shift? And so my two things are, one, I want to spend more time in meditation. And I want to be less of a homebody. Now, you may find the first one ironic since I'm a meditation coach, but and this is where, sorry Navi, that was not somebody knocking at the door, that was me. This is where I feel like I have really slipped up since I landed. I spent a lot of time in this last year really in a meditative state, for lack of a better word, because I was traveling, I was spending so much time alone. And now that I've landed, I have kind of fallen into this rut of not having a consistent practice. And so I was thinking about that in the terms of medicine, like why would I have trouble with meditation at this time? And one is that I feel like I have a foggy head. Let me do some different. So these are my blocks. Fogginess. I also have this illusion that I don't have enough time. And then I also have the dogs are a huge distraction, as you can tell. So those were the blocks that I came up with, why I have not created a consistent practice since I've been here. And so when I take that through the wheel, so fogginess would kind of fit into the west direction because that's the physical attribute that I'm experiencing. The dogs being a distraction, that's somewhere between east and south. Distractions can be in the east, but south are the relationships. This relationship I have with the dogs. Not enough time, that's an east issue, really, because that's kind of, we like to schedule and be in the mental body, and when you feel like you don't have enough time, what it really means is that you don't have enough willingness to make the time. And so that's how it would fall into the wheel. Now the antidote for that is going to be pretty straightforward. So in the east, that's where I'm going to create goals and intentions. And I'm also going to let's write that down. So the east being the mental body, that's where we kind of compartmentalize and plan out and create strategy and a game plan, a map, and all of that kind of stuff. It's stop drinking water over there. I'm sorry, that's really loud. Actually, I probably need some water. The east is really good for all of that pre-nurturing stuff. So you're planning out exactly what that's going to look like. So my goal might be to meditate 3 times a week, or actually some kind of spiritual practice daily. My intentions are to clear my head, to create that space, to deepen my relationship with my guides again, to get back into that sync. The other thing that I'm going to do is, in the east direction, is I'm actually going to schedule time. Sounds so simple, doesn't it? Just schedule time. One of the things I learned early on in my career, because I always worked for myself, was that I would go in and actually make an appointment for myself in my day timer. And then when clients called and wanted to make an appointment, I would look and say, these are my free times. And if I already had my time planned in there, I would not plan over it. If I didn't have my time in there, pretty soon what would be happening is I'd fill up my schedule so much that then there's nothing left. So I learned early on to put yourself in your schedule as a client. And so what I'm going to do in this next week, I'm going to start tomorrow, is I'm going to actually get up, here's the plan, this is the other part of the east direction, is I'm going to get up at 5 a.m. and I'm going to commit to 3 hours where I don't turn on the computer, I don't look at my phone, I turn off all distractions, take the dogs for a walk, give them a bone or whatever I need to do, and then I'm going to, in this time, that will be my time to do my stuff. I'm actually getting ready to be a student in another course for, I think I'm enrolled for 10 months. And so I'm going to use this time to actually do my studies and to do my homework and to incorporate that into my me time. And I'm going to start my day off with intentions. I'm going to do some mantras. I'm going to do some prayer time. And then I might do a meditation. So that's how this is my east antidote, is taking all of these blocks and looking at it from the east and making a plan, writing out my goals, etc., etc. Now the south, let's go to fogginess. One thing I can do is I can do some breath work. Breath work is great for clearing out that mental body or that fogginess. I'm going to do things to open up my senses because that will always elicit more of a meditative response, because you want to go into a meditation with your senses fully open, because that's how your guides actually speak to you, is through your imagination and through your senses and your intuition. And I'm also going to spend more time out in nature, because for me, nature is where I can do soul tracking, and that's something we learn in the mentorship, and that's how to communicate with my guides very clearly. I also, when I'm in nature, it heightens my intuition exponentially. And those are two things that I rely on when I'm in meditation. It also helps me to clear my head. I also will spend more time in the water element. And the reason for that, water is in the south, water is emotions. But water for me is a great conduit for being able to speak clearly to my guides. So I use that water element. So my meditations, this might be too much information, but when I take a bath, I have this bucket of stones that I dump into my bath water, and I bathe with crystals, gems, and actually mostly stones that I have found on my travels. And I take a rock and I look at it very, very clearly, and it's so beautiful. I look at all the lines, the colors, the patterns, the texture, and for me that's a meditation in and of itself. And it's also when my guides are clearly speaking to me. Navi actually really loves when I look at the stones too. She comes in and she looks at them also with me. It's actually really pretty cute. And then in the West, I am going to eat healthier foods. I'm also going to drink more water. So in the West, we have the physical body. And if I want to clear up this fogginess, then I want to have clarity. I want to make sure I'm eating healthy. I want to drink more water. I want to make sure I'm not putting things into my body that are going to weigh my body down. Sugar, alcohol, processed foods, things like that. So you really want to pay more attention to the physical aspect. And not just physical body, but also physical space. So I will probably create a new meditation space. I just moved into this condo in November. So I'm still kind of figuring out where I'm going to be doing things. So I will put more focus on creating that space where it's sacred. It's not with distractions. I'll have to figure out where I can put the dogs physically when I'm doing meditation. But I think this through. And then I create it in a way, I actually create my sacred space in the same way that I work with the medicine wheel. So I make sure that there's, the water element is there, the relationships that I have with people are showing up, that I've got something that's inspiring, words that are inspiring, etc. That's a whole other workshop. So this is my west direction. And now in the north direction, I will, in order to add this meditation practice, what I need to do is I need to turn off distractions. And that allows me to go inward. I also need to set my intentions. And now this is a little different than these intentions, because now I'm going inward and I want to set the intention for my meditation, or set the intention for my journey or my breathwork session. And I'm also going to journal my journeys. And this ties a little bit into soul tracking, because now that I've got some intentions for my work, now I want to journal about it so that I can track it, and I can begin to see how my guides are going to be speaking to me through my meditation time, and be able to take that information at that deepest level of where I am, and then begin to work that into the wheel as well, into my everyday life. So that's one way of taking just this one through the medicine wheel. Having the awareness of why what was blocking me and where that falls into the wheel, and then how to use the wheel to create a really concrete plan for that. Now the next one, we'll just kind of go through this one quickly, but sorry for the noise. So, how to not be a homebody. So kind of like Natalia, I took this last year, did this journey, consciously went inward, and now I have landed, and some of you may or may not know about my journey, but I I blogged about it basically, or made videos throughout the year. But the big thing was, where in the world will Dakota land? And I ended up landing in Ohio, of all places, because part of the journey was to figure out where I wanted to go. And hold on, let me have that. Yes, we have squeaky toys that we don't want to. There. So anyway, it was a year-long journey of figuring out where I wanted to live, and I had all these choices, you know, Portland and San Francisco and San Diego and Flagstaff and Tucson and Santa Fe, Austin, all these great places that I could have landed. And I ended up here in Ohio because at the end of the day, what I found out was that family is the most important. And I had been away from my family for 30 years, and I really wanted to come back and spend some quality time with them. Hence, having New Year's Day with my mom is going to be really a treat. So anyway, in that year, I consciously go inward, and I go into the north direction, and I spend the year really working on my own inner being. Now that I've come out of this space, where I landed is I am within walking distance of, I'm in the art district, so art galleries and restaurants and bars and parks, and there's a market and the brewery district. Everything is within walking distance. And I'm in like the hub of Columbus, Ohio. And lots of activity. There's people everywhere. But I have still not been able to get myself out of that introspective mode. So like you can tell, I'm kind of like, now I'm in that place where I need to get out, I want to get out, but I really like being in my home. I really like being in my space. But I want to be less of a homebody. And there's a couple of blocks that I came up with. One is I'm just pure lazy. I feel like at the end of the day I'm tired, and it's like, oh, I just don't want to go out. And so I just get lazy. That's all it is to it. And then I really like being in my home. So whenever I can talk people into coming here, I do. And then, but beyond that, I just really like being here. And now, this next block is going to sound really funny, but I can't even believe I'm writing it down, actually. We have a parking lot for our condos, and I have a parking spot if I find one. But what happens is that because I'm in such a popular area of Columbus, that a lot of times people will park illegally in our parking lot because we're right in the middle of the whole art district. And if I leave, especially on a Friday night or a Saturday night, I am sure as heck not going to find a parking spot when I come back. And so I tend to not drive now. Like if I wanted to go to see my family and stuff like that, I have a very likelihood of losing my parking spot. And so I use that as an excuse to not go places. Or if I do go places, I pick a time when I think people are going to be at work and I might get a parking spot when I come back. So sounds ridiculous, but that's my reality. So when I look at those blocks, I think, okay, I really need to get out. So in the east direction, again, we're going to make a plan, we're going to set our goals, and what is it that, what would look differently than what I'm living right now. And for me, it might be to have a social event 2-3 times a week. Maybe 2 times a week. Let's start out with 2 times a week. And again, I might actually look at what kind of things do I enjoy doing. or want to do? What would be my goal? One of the things I came up with is that I want to begin doing yoga again. So here I'm making my goals, I'm setting my intentions, and I'm also going to, again, what did we talk about in the last one? We're going to schedule that time. And I might actually have to do some mantras to say, I can do this. I can get out of my house. Whatever. So I also may need to do some research. And I actually just began to do that. I did a little bit of research of different yoga classes and things like that. I might research some meetup groups that kind of align with my what I like to do. So that's all East direction. So that's how I'm going to conquer that in the East. Make my goal, schedule my time, do some research, etc. And then in the South, let me get my blue again. Sounds funny, but hey, let's just reach out. I've got some old friends in Columbus that I have not talked to in a while, and I can reach out to them and set up a dinner date. I can actually add some movement to my life, which would mean moving beyond the space of these walls, however that might look. I also am going to maybe create some new friendships. I have a park right here that I walk to. I walk the dogs there 4 times a day, and it's always full of people. A lot of them are my neighbors, and if I could just stop and strike up a conversation with somebody and start forming a friendship with people in this area, that would be really great. So I'm going to create those relationships. Relationships is in the South. And then I'm also going to do some soul dates. So that's going to get me out of my house, and I'm going to I'm going to go over here in the East and make a list of my joys also, things that I love to do. And then in the South, I'm going to start incorporating those into some of my soul dates. And then I'm also going to more family time. And I actually have been doing that. So that's how I'm going to conquer this with my South energy. And then in the West, I'm actually going to go to yoga. And in my research, what I found out is that just like right across the street in one alley over is a big yoga studio. So I can still keep my parking spot and I can walk to yoga. And this is the other thing, like, okay, so if this is a block, I can actually invite some of my friends here, because this is a hub and people love to come here. I don't have to lose my parking spot. Just get more people here and we go out and walk in the galleries and do whatever we need to do. So I'm going to go to yoga classes. I'm also going to maybe plan out a night out each week, even if it's by myself, to go to a restaurant here in this area or somewhere and meet some new people. And then in the West, it's again like what I just said with the relationships with the people here in the park, is maybe plan and do some, maybe go on a walk with somebody, or hey, offer to walk their dogs one time, give them a break, and start forming those relationships where I have a desire now to get out of the house, or an obligation that's going to pull me out of the house. And in that, I'm going to begin building these relationships down here. And then in the north direction, there's really not a lot that I can do in the north direction in terms of this, of getting out of the house, except to just understand from a spiritual level what that will do and what that will bring, if that makes sense. So that is just one more way of taking that through the wheel. Let me get my tablet again. I wanted to make sure that I answered her question, and also the other questions that came up. One of the things that I find probably the most important piece of all of this really is about finding balance. It's not about getting our balance scores up to 100%, but it's about having things in check, like understanding and seeing and being conscious of what's out of balance in your wheel and why. And when you can find that balance and you start working the wheel and doing a little bit at a time so that you're not so overwhelmed. When you look at all of your deficiencies and excess energies, it can look really overwhelming until you start to map it out and understand it from a lot of different levels. Once you do that, then the act of bringing balance back into your life is a lot easier because there's a roadmap and there's an understanding there. And you get to the deeper levels of the why. Like, why am I this way? If I trace back this whole homebody thing, if I went really, really back, this is actually where the North would come in. I would understand why I have such a desire to be at home and be alone, that I'm comfortable in that space. Because when I was a child, I was a latchkey kid. And so I came home to an empty house every day. My parents worked, my siblings were older and they were in school. And so I got used to being alone. I got very comfortable counting on myself, and that elicited a fierce independence within me. And also, just this comfortable feeling of being by myself. I could count on myself. And so I never reached out to other people as easily. I am very much a do-it-yourself kind of person. And so when I have that understanding from the North, I can see how that has created a ripple effect throughout my life and created these small imbalances throughout my life. And this now is showing again in my life in maybe a different way. And I can start to implement some changes in my life that is going to eliminate that. And ultimately, though, what I want to do is look at that core issue, the original wound, and go back to what is the seed that created that in the very beginning, and determine if that's a seed that I want, or if I need to change some contracts or cut some cords or heal some pieces of my childhood or young adulthood. What needs to happen in that arena. Or maybe to understand how that is a strength and be able to utilize that strength in areas that I didn't expect to. So that's how the North would actually come in. I completely spaced that one. But finding that balance within the wheel and really going back to the layers, unlayering those pieces of your life is such an important aspect of soul healing. And that is what leads you into living a more authentic life, to living more in your power. Because here you've got control. You have power over the decisions and the choices that you're making. You're not unconscious anymore. Empowerment comes from conscious choices. And it also comes from owning those choices, owning those events, owning those experiences, and seeing them for the greater good. Anything that has happened in your life that is deemed horrible, bad, or whatever, are actually events that have pushed you into being who you are today. And they were learning experiences, and without them you wouldn't be the same person. And so you have a greater understanding and a greater appreciation for those things that have happened to you in your life when you come at it from a more conscious view. And when you're living authentically and you're living your truth and you understand the power that you have and you feel empowered, then you begin living a passionate life, because you start balancing the sacred purpose of all of these quadrants. And when you're living the sacred purpose, you're doing what you love to do, you feel like you're making a contribution to the world, you're deeply connected to your spiritual life, You have a great space that you live in. You have a healthy body. You treat yourself well. You take care of your needs. And then you have these beautiful relationships that support who you are and that you feel that unconditional love. That is living your sacred purpose. And that leads to living a passionate and fulfilling life. So this doesn't happen overnight. And what you can do right now, that we are in the north direction of the medicine wheel, at least here in North America, or north of the equator. We have a lot of students in the mentorship from Australia and New Zealand, so I always have to be mindful. They are in their summertime. They're in that nurturing time right now. While we're going inwards, they're going out to play. So if you're in Australia or down below the equator, down under, you're going to kind of do the opposite. You're going to get out there and get that vibrancy moving in your life, movement, breath work, and creativity and passion and things like that. For those of us who are going into our north, what we can do right now is really take some time to go inside and inward and cultivate those seeds that are inside of us. You know, really get in touch and in tune with what you're feeling. You know, that's the south direction. What your thought processes are. Where do those thoughts come from? If you have that constant nagging thought saying, I can't do this, I'm not enough, I don't have enough, then where were those birthed? Likely they're birthed from a childhood event or a teacher or a parent or somebody. And then really looking deeply at how am I caring for myself? How do I care for my space? How is my external world being reflected about my internal world? Because that says a lot about your external space. Says a lot about what is going on internally. And so we go into the north and we turn off all of that outward influence and we figure out just from our soul space, who am I? And that's what I would encourage each of you to do for the next 3 months until March 22nd, is to spend this time really listening to that deep inner still voice inside of yourself that knows that you know. And that circles back to what I said in the very beginning, is that you have this wisdom. You have all of this knowledge. You just have to wake it up and uncover it, recover it, do whatever you need to do to get yourself back into that space, and to understand yourself fully. Don't let somebody else tell you who you are. You tell yourself who you are. And then you be that in the world around you. When you come back around to the east direction, you step firmly into that and you begin making that plan. This is how I'm going to show up in the world today. This is what I'm going to do. This is my contribution to the world. And you begin living it. So, having said all that, you know what this next step is. I would love for you to come to the mentorship. We're opening it up right now for the north direction, and that's exactly what we're going to do. We're going to go inward, and we work on deep presence. We work on your quantum field. We work on distilling down to who you are at that deepest level. You do a lot of journeying, a lot of meditation, and breath work. We have a live breath work session that we do. There's a lot of stuff that we do in the north direction. It's actually, for an introspective direction, it is one of the busiest directions that we have, because there's a lot of internal work that we do to really figure out what is that core seed that we are about to plant when we go to the east direction. And it is the birthing spot of your sacred purpose in the context of the entire wheel. So I would be thrilled to have you join us. And I think that, I've been doing this program now for 3 years, this specific program. And we've made a lot of changes in it as we have gone through this process 3 times now. And I can say that the mentorship is probably the most proud when I went into my north direction, I found out what my seed was for the mentorship, and I began cultivating it in the east and fleshed it out. And in the north, in the south, I really nurtured it and built these relationships. And then in the west, we kind of had the external expression of the mentorship. And I've gone through the north 3 times now with this mentorship, and it has finally, what I feel like, has refined itself to a very pure program. I feel like I'm extremely proud of it. I love the community that we have. We've got people that's all over the world. We have, I think, 16 countries represented in the mentorship. And I have watched these people, some of them are on their 3rd year with me, and they just keep going around the wheel. And we keep adding things to, keep giving them chunks of new stuff. But for me, being able to witness and be a part of somebody's journey is extremely rewarding. I have been in awe of just the amount of courage and willpower and humbleness and vulnerability that these folks have gone through and have exhibited and have embraced. And I would love that for you. And I had a couple of questions that got sent to me personally about the mentorship. Oh man, she found another squeaky toy. Navi, no squeaky. She does this sometimes during the call also. Thank you for your squeaky toy. Okay, let me have it. Yep, we're gonna put them right up here. We're gonna fill up our little altar here with squeaky toys. Some of the questions that I got personally, one is, do you do a payment plan? We do a payment plan for a single session. I don't do a payment plan for the Wisdom Keeper, which is the year-long program, unless you have been in the program for at least 1 session. So that's just that's a bonus for people who have been with us for a little bit. The other question I got is, it was actually from somebody in Australia, and wanted to know if, since we're going into the north direction, if the course would be relevant to her since she's going into her south. Yes, because when we are working in the north, we're actually affecting all the different directions. We work the wheel simultaneously, all 4 directions, all 7 directions simultaneously. Even though our emphasis is on where I happen to be, in the north right now, we are still employing all of the directions. Like in the north, we work with presence, which is a lot of east energy. We work on the relationship we have with our guides, which is a lot of south energy, and also self-love. We work in the context of creating that internal space, which is that sacred space of the west. So to answer your question, quite simply, it doesn't matter where you live in the world, or what direction we're in, or what direction you start in, it's all relevant. It will all, it's all very fluid. So that's not an issue. I'm trying to think of the other question I got. Okay, so animals are my big challenge. The other question I received was, it was somebody who studies, I think it was Kabbalism. Would it be relevant to study shamanic practices or the medicine wheel if they have a strong influence of Kabbalism? And this is a container. You can be any, excuse me, any religion, any spiritual practice, and you can bring it to the wheel. So this is non-denominational. Now the shamanic practice is part of it, and that was another question I had, is how does shamanism play into the medicine wheel? And you learn tools that can be applied either shamanically or esoterically, or you can frame it out into what feels comfortable to you. A lot of people don't have a comfort with calling themselves a shamanic practitioner. or a shaman. You shouldn't actually ever really, this is my opinion, nobody should call themselves a shaman. Even though we are all shamans, it's a level of respect and humility to not call yourself a shaman. Other people can call you a shaman, but you don't call yourself a shaman. So that was a weird tangent, but all of that, all of the tools and things that you get in the mentorship, those are tools that you can use in your everyday life that help you to employ this kind of rhythm in the wheel, that are, you can take it down to a deeper level into a shamanic practice, or into a druidic practice, or into a Kabbalic practice, or whatever practice you do. Or you can use it very third world, or third dimensional kind of stuff. And I'll give you one example. Ritual is a really strong tool that you can use in any practice. Every religion has rituals, and you can do a really beautiful, deep ceremonial type ritual that invokes different energies or different spirits or different practices or whatever, or feelings, emotions. And then there's some really very common everyday rituals, like brushing your teeth, and taking that brushing your teeth and creating a different kind of a ritual. When I brush my teeth, I am consciously thinking about the speech that I want to have, or maybe things that I said today that I didn't want to say if I'm brushing my teeth at night. And I use that time in that activity to put a conscious spin on it, and that makes that ritual much more meaningful. That's just one example. So in the mentorship, you're getting tools that will apply to you wherever you are in your life and with whatever belief or practice that you have. One of the things that we do in the North is I have you go through distilling down, what do you believe and why? Because that is really, you know, I see a lot of people going that mile wide, and in order to go a mile deep with something, you've really got to figure out what is it that you believe personally for yourself, and begin bringing that into your existence, like forming your practices around your belief system. So I'm not going to waste all of your time. I've got a whole page that spells out what we do in the mentorship, what we do in every single direction, the price points, all of it. So I would love for you to just, at least just go check out the program and see if it feels right for you. And that's one thing I would say too, is if you have a desire to go through the mentorship and you, let's say, this is your goal. I want to enroll in the mentorship, but, and I hear all of that but a lot. It's not the right time, I don't have the money, I don't have whatever. List out your blocks. One by one. What would keep you from enrolling in a program that focuses on you becoming powerful, authentic, passionate, and living the best life that you can? What would stop you from enrolling in a program like that? Write out all of your blocks. And maybe one of your blocks is you don't like me. That's fine. Write that down. And then see if you can use the medicine wheel to plot out how to overcome some of those blocks. You know, it might be lack mentality, not enough time, too many practice. Maybe you do too many other workshops. Anyway, work it through the wheel. See what you come up with. And you may, at the end of the day, find out that you really don't want to do it. Or you might find out, I really do want to do this, I'm going to make it happen. But I would encourage all of you to go into the north direction, work with your guides, and see what is your next best step. And if it's this, then work it out to where it does happen for you. And if you need help going through this process with one of these blocks, send me an email. I'll be more than happy to help you out. I have gone through these same blocks for myself. Actually, the workshop I told you that I just signed up for was not cheap. And it's I'm pretty sure it's 10 months, if not a year. So my right off the bat thing was, oh my God, it's so expensive, and do I have the time for it? Those were my two big blocks, and I took it through the wheel, and then within 20 minutes of taking it through the wheel, I signed up for it without even a question. So figure that out, and if you need help figuring it out, I will help you figure that out, because I would really love for you to be in the mentorship. I think that you would get a lot out of it. I have 100% full faith in this program, and you can also ask any of the mentorship peeps. I have full faith that they will give you a review that is honest and from the heart, and they will also be able to give you some insights that, you know, it's different if it's not coming from me. So the enrollment is going to end January 8th because we begin class January 10th, and I need at least a day to get everybody set up. The sooner you sign up, the better. One, because you will have stuff right away to work on. In fact, I think that's one thing that I am set apart from, because this other workshop that I signed up for, there's nothing until we actually start on the 7th, and I'm just like, I signed up 3 weeks ago, and I really want something. One of the things that I love about this program, my program, is that the moment you sign up, there's stuff for you to do. Everybody gets the Introduction to the Medicine Wheel workshop. There's meditations for you to do. You've got a community that is already formed, and there's conversations happening in there right now. Like that ding you hear on my phone, those are conversations that are happening. And then we start on the 10th. So the enrollment ends on the 8th. And also, I'm going to do an early bird. We just did a Wisdom Keeper workshop a couple of days ago. And every month the Wisdom Keepers get together, and we have a full out workshop. And I'm going to offer that workshop to anybody who signs up in the next 2 days. So that'll be from now until January 4th that you can, right? Today's January 1st? Yeah. This video is supposed to go out tomorrow. I might actually put it out today. I don't know. We'll see. It's New Year's Day. I'll end that early bird special on the 4th, though, regardless of whether it goes out today or tomorrow. So anyway, hopefully it has a couple of good incentives for you. If you have any questions whatsoever, please feel free to email me. My email is down below. There's also a link to go to view the page for the mentorship and see if it's a right fit for you. And please, really, seriously, practice this and go through this process with any blocks that may be keeping you from joining the mentorship. And that'll give you at least some clarity about why you're saying yes or no. And anyway, thanks guys. Thank you so much for hanging out with me for these 3 videos. I know I get kind of talkative. I get really passionate about what I teach. And after this video, I'll take these videos down on January 10th, so you only have until then to watch them. And then I'll be in the mentorship, working with the mentorship peeps for the next 9 weeks, and then I'll do another 3-part series in March. So anyway, I look forward to seeing you in the mentorship. Bye guys.